Toyota's taking a very different approach from Tesla and a lot of the other battery electric car makers. No, their plan is to just lean all the way into hybrids and see how long they can keep that going. I don't know. Maybe it's the right approach. I disagree. And joining me is Jim, the Iowa Tesla guy, and Brian Reeby from He Drives Electric. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. Yes, he drives electric. I mean, it's fine. So
Works
guys,
for me.
I don't know if you've heard, but Toyota, boy, they're doing great. They've got some real big plans to be the anti-Tesla, and it's paying off. The stock has been locked in a long skid for Tesla, while Toyota has outperformed Tesla by 90 percentage points over the last year. Here's how it's going. I don't know if you know this, but how your stock does is how good your automotive strategy for drivetrain is, especially when you look over a 3-month period.
Solid logic.
A 3-month trend means that it's a good strategy. I don't know if you've seen the new Prius out and about. It looks good. This is this is the Prius they should have made 15 years ago.
I'm jealous. Our 2008 Prius is not as aesthetically pleasing.
I swear they did it on purpose, just like with the Buzz Forks, giving it a forgettable name and just an ugly overall appearance. They did it so that it would be forgettable because they didn't want to make them. Yes, really, Tesla's stock has been locked in a long skid, declining 46% over the last 2 years, including 6% over the past year. Electric vehicles are losing buzz. So there are some growth cuts, some projections in growth that have been reduced. EV inventories look bloated and affordability remains a challenge. Brian, do you think that that's an industry-wide problem?
It doesn't appear to be. I mean, we'll see how this quarter shakes out. And Q1 is usually the worst quarter for automakers, but seems like Tesla is selling a whole lot of vehicles. And if the other EVs aren't hitting all the specs, then or the price points, then they aren't selling as well. It seems pretty obvious.
I bet Jim disagrees. Jim, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely disagree. Toyota's 100% right here. The EV market is going downhill. You can just put it in your calendars. I'm calling it now. The end of Tesla is near. No, I mean this is crazy. This article seems like it was written by someone that's never actually sat inside an EV.
Early adopters already drive EVs, and the next buyers are more cost conscious. China's leading the way on cheap EVs, with BYD recently passing Tesla on volume. Tesla slashed prices, but it's reaching natural limits of cost reductions. First of all, do you agree that they have reached the natural limits of cost reduction?
No.
No, that's ridiculous. The most expensive part's the battery, and the price is still falling. Come on.
Just getting started.
Just getting started. In a few years, battery prices will continue to fall. The most expensive part of the car is going down in cost. A gasoline engine can get no cheaper to make. The limits of engineering have been more or less reached. You might get another 1 or 2% improvement, but that's about it. That's created an air pocket for growth. So Toyota's approach, it appears, is, we can get closer to hitting our targets for mileage in the US alone. Is that, if they could get a hybrid that gets 100 miles to the gallon, would that save them? Would that make this the right approach?
I mean, hybrids have a place, sort of. They appeal to an audience that is not quite ready out of fear, mostly to go full EV. It does give areas that, you can go a lot further on a tank of gas with a hybrid. But in my opinion, you got all of the bad things of a gas car, and you've got all the complexities of an EV, and you try to shove them all together, and it's like more things to go wrong. I think the hybrid is a stopgap solution between gas and full electric. And once battery prices come down, once range starts getting a little bit better, you're going to see the need for hybrids, in my opinion, to completely disappear.
Yeah, I'd say, hybrids are still going to be good for a while for rural places. I don't know if you've seen Kyle Connor's videos with the truck testing, towing and things like that. The Silverado crammed a giant battery in there, And obviously it does the best. It's got the biggest battery. But even they were saying, the Dodge thing that's going to have like a little generator gas, you know,
Range extender.
range extender.
Yeah.
Thank you. Um, that'll be the one for towing for people for a while. And so I think there are uses. I think, like Jim said, there's the fear factor of like EVs are the next thing, but I'll play it safe this purchase cycle with a hybrid. So I think short term it can be an advantage, but when we bought our Prius in 2018, we've still got it over 225,000 miles later. Almost instantly, I wished I could plug it in. And the times when the battery shuts off and you're just silently going, you kind of crave those moments. So I think, short term hybrids have a place. They'll get people converted over as battery technology increases, ranges increase, charging infrastructure is built out. But I think Toyota ignoring EVs or almost ignoring EVs is a bad long-term strategy.
So I would say that Toyota is as Japanese as Japan. So what that tells me there is that they, if they say we're just not going to do electrics, I think the Japanese government would give them as much time as they want to come around, especially if they could make a hybrid that gets ever more mileage, which maybe they could. And the US is, boy, there's a lot of lobbying to try and stop certain states from having their rights to govern themselves as they wish, including things like a gasoline ban. And the EPA long ago said that California is allowed to go their own way on climate issues for emissions. And other states said, how about us? Can we do that? And they said, no, you can either do the federal or the California. So when California does something, a lot of states will jump on because California has a unique topography, which will trap in the pollution and make the air quality really bad. And this isn't a left versus right issue. At least it shouldn't be. It was Reagan who got that exception pushed through. And the EPA was made by Nixon. Now, if Toyota could make this 100-mile-an-hour hybrid, would it save them? And my answer is no, because there's a global ICE phase out coming. This particular article talks about individual cities like London with their congestion charge. Paris is trying to do the same thing. Copenhagen, other places as well that are putting up pedestrian only or zero emission zones. Can you survive without those places? Is your car company just going to sell in Japan and the US and parts of the US, an increasingly small percentage of the US? Would it work? Jim, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to work long term. I won't pretend to speak for the Japanese people, but I've been to Japan more than 25 times, and I work with a lot of people in Japan. As a culture, they are very conservative. And especially for what I've seen with the auto industry, those types of industries are very slow to change, very like sticking with what works and leaning into what works or what has historically worked. And I think you also have to look at Japan itself as a country is very much different than the rest of the world in many respects. And I think Toyota is emoting what they're seeing inside Japan and what Japan needs and thinking that that's what the rest of the world also needs. And where the rest of the world's market conditions may be very different. You see almost no EVs of any kind in Japan when you're over there. It's just not part of their ecosystem for whatever reason. And I think it's going to take some catalyst, something to happen, a sea change to happen in order to get Toyota or any other Japanese manufacturer to just jump on this bandwagon.
Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have not been to Japan, but I'd love to go sometime. The thing I see with a company that size is if you keep having to scale back production because you're, these small markets, the different cities in Europe, eventually countries in Europe, Canada, other places are putting these bans in place. And then you keep having to shrink and shrink and shrink. how much can a company shrink before, all of its assets are no longer viable? If you don't start converting those plants, you're left with a bunch of real estate, contracts, all sorts of stuff that feels like over time it would become pretty burdensome. I'm not a financial expert or industry analyst or anything like that, but I feel like if they don't start making some pretty big shifts, even if it's just for the non-Japanese markets, I feel like that could become a pretty big burden on them, in
Absolutely.
the next decade.
So there's a virtue cycle that goes on. Economies of scale means the more right blinker assemblies you buy, the lower the price goes. But it goes the other way too. You can end up in a death spiral where the car that I couldn't sell for 20,000 last year, now I'm making fewer of them, and now all of the parts cost a little bit more because I don't have the volume. That will come back to bite you a bit. But like you were saying, it's not just those cities. This is I assume, out of date, because these lists are always out of date. These are countries with bans at different times, and we know it's flawed because it says the US in 2030 when really it's only 7 states out of the US in 2030. And you're looking at this, go, well, most of the map is gray. But I would also point out that most of the map don't buy cars. I don't know of a single sale in Antarctica, but the same is true for a lot of these countries where volumes are quite low. If your strategy is to continue selling gas and hybrids into these markets, you're going to have a tough time. China is a huge market. Japan is listed on here for 2030s, but that includes hybrids. And some of these do include hybrids. So if we look at it by the year that it starts, Singapore starts in 2023. So it started last year. A lot of these countries are saying, like Ethiopia, new imported vehicles by 2024 must be electric. And some of these will, like Germany says, no emitting cars. Okay. Diesel and petrol bans. So there are a whole lot of whole countries that are going to be banning these cars. Is Toyota just going to stop selling cars in those markets, or are they praying for a miracle? Jim, you go first.
I don't know if they're praying for a miracle. Part of me thinks that they're just thinking the rest of the world is frankly wrong and that they're right, and they're going to go down this road for a while. And I think there's probably some voices within Toyota telling them that they have to figure it out. But I think it's a deeper problem for them. I'm not an expert in the Japanese auto industry, but there's likely, given infrastructure issues that they're dealing with, that is impairing them somehow of turning around and starting to produce fully electric vehicles at scale. They've got building gas cars down to a science. They can do that really well. So I don't know what's in store for them.
I would say since the 80s, Toyota's plan of, look, we're going to do our best and you will like it, has worked out for them. They've been correct on a lot of things. And it can be hard to say, I've made this quarter came up heads 6 times in a row. I'm feeling good about number 7. I think maybe that's not the best strategy. Brian, do you think they can survive without a serious push for electrification?
Survive, maybe, but I think they have to start making compelling EVs. I have a friend who's got a BZ4X. He loves it. Went from the Prius to that, and he knew what he was getting into, understood the charging issues and stuff like that. But it's not a problem for him, and he seems to love the vehicle after owning it about a year. So, but I think that isn't enough to sustain the whole company as these bans take place.
There's a difference between surviving and flourishing. But, every 18 to 24 months for the last 11 or 12 years, no, going back to 2009, 2007, Toyota has announced, guess what? In 2 or 3 years, we're going to have this miracle solid state battery on the market. So maybe that's what they're waiting for, because press releases are cheaper than actually building electric cars. Toyota's been teasing solid state for several years now. That's an understatement, but it's easy to find. If they really had this miracle battery that had infinite range and could charge in 10 minutes like they always say they do, they would stop pursuing hydrogen and straight gas. And I think they'd abandon hybrids as well. If you've got 750 miles of range, you don't need a hybrid. What you need is, in their case, a miracle, because this don't exist. And frankly, they would cease to be a car company. They would just become the world's most powerful company ever by selling everyone their amazing batteries, because everyone would buy them for the 17 years it takes for the patent to expire. It would be just ridiculous. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Toyota before we get on to the exciting news and a silly picture of the day?
I hope Toyota can figure themselves out. I mean, it's a good car company. I know a lot of people that have bought Toyotas over the years are very happy with Toyotas. They say that I'm going to stick with Toyota, which might be why, Brian, your friend, ended up going with a Toyota EV, just because he was familiar with Toyota, wanted to stick with Toyota. I have a coworker that had a Kia that just got a Kia EV6 and really bought it because it was available on the lot. And he wasn't really into EVs, but okay, it's kind of like a hybrid, but he likes Kia. So I hope they can pull it out. I hope they start making good decisions moving forward. I guess time.
Brian?
Yeah, we've loved our 2008 Prius, almost loved it to death now, but it was a good transition car. It was a step to get to electrification, and for most people, EV is a better choice at this point, and going forward, it will just become more so.
All right. So the thing I'm going to share is this great picture of my boys from the trip. We're checking out the sea lions. We're having some fun there. Yeah, big fat sea mammals, very aggressive and silly and terrifying. They keep their distance, which is great because tourists don't know how to. So definitely beware of that. For the 3 remaining people who don't know, there's going to be a event on June 15th in Muskegon, where I will be there as the master of ceremonies, the moderator of the thing. I helped put together some of the guests on the panel. We invited a lot more people than were able to attend, so it was a lot of fun. And of course, Brian and Jim will be there helping out as well and being part of the festivities and checking out all the great vendors and all the great food and all the neat customized cars on display. If you've got a car that isn't a Tesla but is an EV and you want yours to be on display, we've got room for you too. We're here for the mission, not just the brand, which I think is the right way to go. These tickets are selling fast, but in no real danger of selling out, because the park holds like a cajillion people, like 10,000 people. We will not sell 10,000 tickets. If by some bizarre stretch we do, we've got to make new plans, because that's a number we had not imagined. And there may be another couple guests of very high stature. No, not Elon or Franz. Don't think that big. That may be there that we're in talks with. So it'll be a lot of fun. So guys, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Leave it in them comments below. Like, subscribe, do the usual stuff. You know what you're doing. And, stay tuned, stay juicy. And I can't wait to hear from you, clever robots, in the comments. Yes, that's where.